Welcome to Crane Company. You've joined a company with an incredibly rich history and an even more promising future. As a new associate, we recognize that there is a lot for you to learn. While our objective isn't to make you a Crane historian, we think it's important that you have a sense for Crane's rich history. Today's Crane is the product of over 170 years of excellence, driven by generations of talented associates. Given that each of us is a steward of the business, it will be helpful and perhaps even fun for you to understand where we've been, how we think about Crane today, and importantly, how today's decisions affect both our customers and future generations of Crane associates. To begin, let's turn the clock back to the mid-19th century. An aspiring young man named Richard Teller Crane decided to launch a one-man business in a corner of his uncle's lumber yard in Chicago, Illinois. On July 4, 1855, Crane established the R.T. Crane Brass and Bell Foundry in Chicago. He was 23 years old and served as the molder, furnace tender, metal pourer, and salesman for his fledgling company. Wise beyond his years and certainly ahead of his time, R.T. Crane drafted a resolution to himself to serve as the guiding principles for his business conduct. I am resolved to conduct my business in the strictest honesty and fairness, to avoid all deception and trickery, to deal fairly with both customers and competitors, to be liberal and just toward employees, and to put my whole mind upon the business. The R.T. Crane resolution remains at the core of Being Crane, speaking to all stakeholders and putting ethics, integrity, fairness, and being just at the forefront of our culture. Young Mr. Crane had only been in business a month when he received his first big break. In August 1855, a representative of P.W. Gates & Company approached Crane to ask him to produce engine parts and car boxes for railroad engines and cars. After successfully filling the orders, Crane quickly landed his first major steam heating contract. As R.T. Crane was building his business, Civil War broke out in the United States in 1861. Not long after the first shots were fired at Fort Sumter, the U.S. government placed large contracts with Crane for infantry and cavalry equipment. In order to meet customer demands, Crane built a separate iron foundry in 1864, followed by a grand factory to produce a full line of iron fittings to support the beginning of America's Industrial Revolution. Within a matter of a few years, Crane took on additional lines, including raw iron pipe, fittings and valves, as well as steam warming equipment. In 1867, Crane embarked on another new line of production, steam-powered elevators, a natural extension of the company's growing prowess in steam engine production. Crane was one of the first elevator manufacturers and a pioneer of early elevator technology, especially improvements for safe and reliable operation. In 1871, disaster struck Crane's hometown as the Great Fire of Chicago destroyed nearly 18,000 buildings, leaving nearly 100,000 people homeless. Situated on the west side of the river, Crane's facilities were spared from the inferno. When the fire came to an end, Crane decided to repay a debt he felt to the city that had given him extraordinary opportunity. Out of water from battling the enormous fire, R.T. Crane put a number of his large steam pumps on the river to pump water into the main lines to provide Chicago's citizens with running water. While the city of Chicago was being rebuilt, the Industrial Revolution in the United States kicked into high gear, and Crane's business grew with it. Crane pioneered improvements in manufacturing, including the use of multiple purpose machines invented by R.T. Crane and a conveyor system of moving molds and pouring metal, the beginning of line production in foundries. By the 1890s, R.T. Crane established a metallurgical laboratory thought to be the first in the Midwest. This focus on the science of metals resulted in Crane developing a reputation for products having the strength and quality necessary to meet the challenges of ever higher fluid pressures and temperatures. The company's rigorous approach to metallurgical science and material testing became the model for the valve and fitting industry. After 3 successful decades in the business, Crane's ability to manage its businesses became strained. In 1895, the Crane Elevator Company was sold to allow Crane to concentrate on its rapidly expanding valves and fittings business. The legacy of the Crane Elevator Company lives on today under the name Otis Elevator Company. In the early 1900s, Crane continued lending a helping hand to its employees and community. According to one historian, R.T. Crane was one of the first people to introduce the 8-hour workday in his factories. Crane also initiated a 5-cent lunch program with hot coffee and soup for his employees, providing free medical care for his workers and their families, and developing liberal profit sharing and pension plans, long before other employers even considered such ideas. Crane was quoted as saying, "A loyal employee gives something besides his labor, and the employer should recognize that fact." To manage the ever-expanding business, now with thousands of employees, thousands of products, and operating in many locations, R.T. Crane insisted on systems, processes, and procedures applied throughout the company. In his autobiography, published shortly before his death, R.T. Crane reflected on his accomplishment. "From the very beginning, I put my whole mind on the business, crowded it systematically and persistently, continually adding to our lines, endeavoring to improve our methods of producing goods, pushing the sales, selecting superintendents, foremen, and other help, and systematizing and specializing the work. Very early in my business experience, I became convinced that in order to succeed in the large business in which I was aiming, a thorough system must be devised. As I had received no training that would fit me for this purpose, and was unable to learn of any place where I could obtain the benefit of the experience of others in this direction, it devolved upon me to work out for myself a system of rules and regulations covering every feature of the business. This in addition to supervising all the details of the work, not only in the manufacturing departments, but the sales costs and finance and general office work as well, was a tremendous undertaking. But I finally succeeded in devising a thorough and complete system. I believe that our establishment was the first one in this country to go into this matter so extensively, and that few have accomplished anywhere near as much as we have done in this respect. R.T. Crane's insistence upon having documented processes and procedures was a fundamental and enduring operating principle of the company during and after his leadership. The essence of this philosophy lives on today through our Crane business system, focused on strategic execution for profitable growth through customer focus and driving continuous improvement and the elimination of waste, variation, and overburden throughout the business. Following his death in 1912, members of his family honored his philanthropic wishes by establishing the Crane Fund to aid former employees and their dependents in need of assistance. With $1 million in capital stock from the company, the Crane Fund, along with 2 other company-managed charitable trusts, lives on to provide support to ex-Crane associates in need and charitable organizations around the world, with over $15 million donated annually. With the guiding principles of R.T. Crane firmly ingrained in the company's management team, Crane opened a new plant on 160 acres of land in the heart of Chicago's vast Southwest Industrial District. The Great Works, as the plant was called, cost Crane $12 million and contained 47 separate buildings with a total of 72 acres of floor space. 5 railroads served the plant directly to help Crane produce some 800 tons of forgings and castings daily. Crane's new factory was called upon to manufacture munitions, heating systems, and bathroom facilities for the barracks that would house 4 million soldiers in World War I. In 1918, Crane began an ambitious plan for expansion, both at home and abroad. Before the end of World War I, Crane announced that it would open a plant in Canada, which would later be known as Crane Limited. Similar to its expansion into Canada, Crane's initial entry into the European market was through distribution centers, opening branches in Paris and London. As Europe began to recover from the war, Crane built a new factory in Ipswich, in the southeast of England in 1925, followed by a plant in Paris 4 years later to produce valves and fittings. While Crane had been selling plumbing fixtures since 1886, the company embarked on a bold new venture in the late 1920s to produce a new line of high-end bathroom fixtures. Before long, world leaders were demanding Crane bathrooms. Crane had succeeded in transforming the American bathroom into a symbol of the country's prosperity, a source of national pride, and in the process, making Crane a highly respected household name. The growing global prosperity associated with the end of World War I, fueled by the Industrial Revolution, came crashing down in October 1929. At the height of the Great Depression, unemployment in the United States reached 25%. Elsewhere in the world, peaked at 33%. Wages were falling, and the banking system and businesses alike were failing. Crane set out to lower the company's operating expenses. Crane managed to weather the storm by keeping the company's cash and securities intact. And like other well-financed and efficient corporations, Crane returned to profitability by 1934. But not all companies were able to survive the difficult financial times. One customer in Omaha could not pay his bills to Crane and offered his business in payment. Rather than return the goods to Chicago, Crane determined to sell the material out of the Omaha location. This enterprise was so successful that Crane began to build a network of branches, placing inventory nearer to customers, and eventually carrying competitors' products to provide full service to customers. What began almost by accident grew into a system of branch houses, essentially company-owned distribution outlets that are the forebears of what became Crane Supply. While the list of the company's landmark projects continued to grow, among the most notable was the 1,200 miles pipeline that carried oil across the Syrian desert and through the mighty Tigris and Euphrates rivers. Crane supplied more than 1,000 tons of fabricated pipe and flanges for the line, and more than 265 tons of high-pressure steel valves made in Chicago. Back in North America, Crane supplied the railing material for the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco and valves for the Rockefeller Center in New York City. In an excerpt from an article in Fortune magazine, it was noted that you can't run a railroad or build a dam, operate a paper mill or lay a sewer, dig an oil well or heat a hospital or launch a battleship or even take a shower without using one of the more than 40,000 odd products that are made by Crane Co. After 80 years in business, and as a sign of the company's growing stature, Crane stock was listed on the New York Stock Exchange in 1936. While an unrelenting focus on customer needs and customer service fueled Crane's growth, a major shift in global politics was about to change the landscape for the company once again. In December 1941, the United States entered World War II. As it had done in previous years, Crane embraced the nation's effort, ramping up production to meet the demands of its primary customer, the U.S. Navy. At the start of the war, Crane was producing 6,000 tons of steel valves per year. By mid-1942, output climbed to 25,000 tons annually. The events that fueled Crane's growth in the preceding decades also gave rise to the development of world-class technical and engineering capabilities in the business. A pioneer in the science of fluid management, Crane's technical and engineering prowess was manifest in the 1942 publication of Flow of Fluids, known today as Technical Paper 410. This comprehensive study of the dynamic flow of fluids through valves, fittings, and pipe continues to be the standard reference for fluid flow science and is still used around the world as a standard college engineering text. In 1951, Crane entered the aerospace market with the acquisition of Hydro Air, a well-established aerospace company in the USA. Hydro Air's breakthrough innovations evolved from solutions developed in support of early supersonic jet-powered aircraft. In fact, the majority of aircraft today rely on Hydro Air brake controls for safe, efficient, dependable stopping in all weather conditions. In 1954, Monsanto started the House of the Future and asked architects to design a plastic house to be built at Disneyland. Monsanto invited Crane to participate in the electronic kitchen and bathroom. The wave of a hand before an electric eye turned water on and off. sinks adjusted with the push of a button to the heights of both child and adult. And toiletries were dispensed automatically. The exhibit was so well received that in 1956, another project, Tomorrowland, opened in Disneyland with an inventive interactive exhibit about the flow of fluids. In the late 1950s and early 1960s, Crane expanded its valve line substantially through a series of acquisitions. By the close of 1960, Crane had added 9 manufacturing plants that produced plumbing, heating, air conditioning, and water conditioning equipment. In 1961, the company acquired Deming Company, a well-regarded manufacturer of industrial pumps and water systems. Within 2.5 years, Crane's global manufacturing capacity increased from 13 to 50 plants. The company was now truly global in scope, with manufacturing operations in England, France, Italy, the Netherlands, Mexico, Canada, and Australia. In 1969, NASA succeeded in landing the first man on the moon, and Hydro Air's coolant pumps were used in the lunar landing module, the Eagle. Hydro Air's coolant pumps subsequently operated environmental control systems in the Lunar Excursion Module and the Apollo program. Today, Crane equipment operates on Mars as integral components of the Mars rover and more recent missions since. By the 1970s, Crane was well positioned in 4 major areas of concentration: fluid and pollution control, steel, building products, and aircraft and aerospace. Within a few years, the company exited the plumbing and steel businesses, and by the mid-1980s, launched a strategy for growth that would transform the company. As part of the acquisition of Unidynamics Corporation of Stamford, Connecticut, Crane entered the fiberglass reinforced thermostat plastics market with the Chemlite Company. The business's wide fiberglass reinforced plastic panels provided a durable, lightweight, and cost-effective alternative to the transportation, recreational vehicle, and building products markets in North America and Europe. 2 other important businesses joined the fold in the Unidynamics acquisition: National Vendors and Resistoflex. These businesses launched Crane into the manufacture of vending machines and lined pipe and hose products, extending Crane's product lines and applications. With a history of a holding company model, Crane's chairman, Shell Evans, devised a strong growth strategy focused in the areas of fluid handling, engineered materials, merchandising systems, aerospace, defense, and controls. Acquisitions in the mid-1990s, including LDEC Corporation, a maker of electronics and electromechanical products, Mark Controls, and the microelectronic business of Interpoint Corporation, further reinforced Crane's aerospace and defense focus. Under the leadership of CEO Eric Fast, Crane moved to a more integrated operating company from a holding company. Harkening back to R.T. Crane's penchant for systemizing and specializing the work, the company formalized and introduced the Crane Business System, initially intended as a collection of best-in-class continuous improvement methodologies. The Crane Business System has evolved into today's holistic management philosophy, deployed across all businesses through an integrated operating company model. A series of additional acquisitions in the late 1990s and early 2000s further strengthened Crane's position in the vending, engineered materials, and fluid handling segments. Dixie Narco augmented the vending machine portfolio, while Cashcode, NRI, and Money Controls introduced payment systems to the merchandising systems business. In engineered materials, Lasco, Sequentia, Noble Composites, and Fabwell complemented Chemlite, ultimately becoming Crane Composites. Fluid handling added Zomox, Saunders, Krombach, and through a series of internal mergers, formed Crane Chem Pharma and Energy. A strong focus on customer satisfaction and disciplined management positioned Crane to weather its next storm. As it's now known, the Great Recession of 2008 crippled the global banking industry and triggered business failures at a level not seen since the 1930s. Emerging from the crisis a stronger business, Crane completed another transformative move in the acquisition of MEI in 2013. When combined with Crane's existing payment businesses, Crane Payment Innovations had become the global leader in unattended payment solutions. Eric Fast retired in 2014, and under the leadership of CEO Max H. Mitchell, Crane has continued to execute on its long-standing strategy, moving the company further along its integrated operating company journey, focused on 3 key global growth platforms: fluid handling, aerospace and electronics, and payment and merchandising technologies. With several acquisitions, including the second largest acquisition in the history of the company, that of Crane & Co. Inc., which ironically had no relation to RT Crane and was better known as Crane Currency. Soon after, Crane changed the name of its fluid handling segment to Process Flow Technologies to better convey the key strengths and core competencies of the business, providing proprietary and highly engineered process flow technology to our customers. In March 2022, another major inflection point in its history took place when Crane announced its intent to separate into 2 independent publicly traded companies to optimize investment and capital allocation, accelerate growth, and unlock shareholder value. Post-separation, Crane's payment and merchandising technologies business became Crane NXT, and Crane Company retained the aerospace and electronics, process flow technologies, and engineered materials segments. Since our very beginning, a period characterized by devastating global and civil wars, the rise and fall of nations and regimes, economic prosperity and stock market crashes, as well as extraordinary technological advancement, only a few American companies have thrived. In fact, in the Fortune 500, about 1 in 10 U.S. businesses founded a century and a half ago exist today. Crane has demonstrated remarkable resilience and success, focusing on innovation and growth, while characterized by a desire to systematize and continuously improve the work, to embrace change and take risks. What makes Crane Company unique is its unwavering commitment to the core values it set in place in 1855, which set the standards for a small company whose landmark products helped fuel the American Industrial Revolution. Those values, first expressed by RT Crane, have continued to guide the actions of the men and women of this organization for over a century and a half, and have proven to be even more relevant today. While the individual businesses they work for may be quite diverse, the people of Crane Company are linked together through shared values, shared processes, and a shared sense of pride in how they conduct their business. Operating in a sometimes brutally competitive marketplace, the only way that we can ensure that Crane Company will be here for decades and centuries ahead is to stay true to our core values of uncompromising customer focus, integrity, and continuous improvement. Much will be demanded of everyone in the organization in the years ahead, but RT Crane constantly challenged his workforce, and challenge has always brought out the best in our people. Welcome, and thank you for now being part of Crane and for being Crane.